Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this panel that is called Sustaining Culture in the Era of Globalization, which is presented in partnership with Global Toronto as part of the 2023 Folk Alliance International Conference. My name is Tressa Levasseur. My pronouns are she and her. And by way of a visual description, I am a woman with light pink skin, purpley raspberry colored glasses, and brown curly hair. And the room behind me has long orange shiny curtains and a little lamp. I serve as the Program and Community Engagement Manager at Folk Alliance International. Before we begin, let us take a moment to note and to celebrate that we are joined today by folks from around the globe, both in this panel and tuning in, and to collectively recognize the importance, complexity, and difficulty of offering land acknowledgements in the context of online organizing, creating, and collaborating. I'm personally joining you from what is colonially known as Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, which is not only the ancestral and traditional, but also the contemporary land of the Erie, Neutral, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe people, among many other Indigenous nations who have lived on and in relation with this land. We invite everyone watching not only to join in acknowledging our shared responsibility to work towards reconciliation, but to commit to taking personal, meaningful, and measurable action towards healing the legacies of colonization, forced migration, and cultural erasure. Now it is my great pleasure and privilege and honor to introduce our moderator today, who will then introduce this jam-packed panel of global experts on this topic. All of these panelists are joining us today thanks to the generous efforts and personal invitations of our fabulous moderator. Please welcome Umair Jaffar, Executive Director of Small World Music. Welcome, Umair.
Thank you, Tressa. Thank you for this invitation and for the introduction. I'm really pleased that space has been created for this discussion and humbled by this opportunity. By way of description, my name is Umair Jaffar. I'm based in Toronto, colonial name of Takaranto, which is the land of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Mississaugas of New Credit. And I am currently joining you from my room. I am wearing a white shirt. I wear brown glasses. I have a small beard, and I have a blurry background. I'm really privileged to be part of this discussion because it has been something that inspired me to join the music sector in the first place. So it's really exciting to have some of the heroes in this field from around the world be on this panel. And without further ado, I think I should introduce those heroes to you. So I will pass the mic, as you say, on to our panelists. First would be who, how does this work? Let's see, is there a slide? Maybe not. Oh, there you go. Qian, you're up next. Over to you.
Hi, thank you, Umair. And thank you, Tressa and the Folk Alliance for organizing this panel. My name is Qian. I'm an ethnomusicologist. I am originally from China. I'm from an ethnic group called the Hui, which is a Sinophone Muslim ethnic group in China. And my PhD dissertation is about the sound culture of the Uyghur Muslims, especially the Sufi Uyghur Muslims in northwestern China's Xinjiang area. I did my PhD study at SOAS, University of London, and now I'm working as an editor of the Répertoire international de littérature musicale, or RILM, which is a database of music research based in New York City. And I also I just learned a new word, which I think is suitable for my role, which is music activist. I have been looking for such a term for a long time, so thanks to my colleagues who use the term. And I think that is a proper term to describe myself. I do various projects, but mostly it's because of my will to support marginalized music cultures, and I hope to empower underrepresented groups of people from not just China, but also from around the world. So I produce concerts, I produce CDs, I do radio shows, I tour with artists, but it's all for that reason. And I think that's probably something everyone on this panel share. So I look forward to discussing our what we can do to preserve our folk cultures with all my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Qian. I will pass it on to Dr. Fouzia Saeed. Dr. Fouzia, you'll have to unmute yourself again, sorry.
Got it, okay. I'm from Pakistan, and right now I'm communicating with you from Islamabad. And I have been in the field of culture, as we state here, culture or heritage, we call it, for many decades. And I have worked in my private capacity with organizations I have established, and also with government departments. So one organization I initiated was Folklore Society of Pakistan. And that has people, cultural people from different parts of the country. And I was the head of the only folklore institute in Pakistan for 3-4 years. And that was a very pleasant experience. Pleasant, I would say, because I did what I wanted to do. Document. We are very oral people in South Asia. I think other people can relate to that. Very oral people. So a lot of our cultural things are not documented properly. We do have books once in a while on this culture or that culture, but it's not a systematic documentation. And similarly, music also, we do have albums of folk music, but it is not very systematic. So from the institutions, I was able to contribute in that systematic documentation and exploring people that were not in the limelight. And I really like to explore our traditional gurus in culture, musicians, lyrics writers, who people do not know. And I feel like they have a lot of, we should have a lot of gratitude towards them. And then I was also the head of Pakistan National Council of the Arts, which takes care of the contemporary arts of Pakistan, like sculpture and calligraphy and painting and other aspects other than folk. So I have my personal objectives were, number one, to gather the culture walas, meaning the people who are into culture, so that we can have a solidarity, some sort of a solidarity, because we all step into puddles and challenges. And it was very nice to hear the open culture, Islamic culture. I think somebody was mentioning it earlier. But in Pakistan, gradually, we get into resistance, phases of resistance, where it is said that performing arts are not a part of our religion or should be discouraged through our religion, etc. So there are a lot of balancing acts that we have to do. We have to go, we cannot go outright and propagate things, and we cannot shut the doors. So we have to keep finding middle path. And good to know about China, because I have been very active in our northern areas. They border China in Gilgit and Baltistan. And I have recently set up a recording studio there and have been trying to record again the old ustads. I feel like when they die, there will be a lot of compositions that they will just take with them. And the new singers have not really gotten them all together. So
Dr.
I'm
Fouzia,
also
you've thrown in so many, oh, sorry to interrupt, but you've thrown in so many crucial things here already that, you know, I'm tempted to start the conversation off of that. Can we hold that thought for a bit and finish the introductions and come back to this? Because there are some really significant points that you shared as part of the introduction already.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm very
Yeah.
interested in border areas, because I feel that the countries, when their border lines are sketched, there are a lot of overlaps. So I have been to many borderlands of Pakistan, inside Pakistan, and see the amalgamation of countries next to us, and have done a lot of research on that area. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, borders and lines are a huge topic on their own, hey? Especially in the context of colonization and how people have been divided historically. Well, over to Franki, who represents a country with many borders and islands. Franki, please introduce yourself.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, my name is Franki Raden. That's my actually pen name. My real name is very long, as you read it there. So I am basically, but I was also active as a music critic before, writing for many Indonesian periodical. Yeah, I used to be a professor at York University, and also University of Toronto, and then also I taught at National University of Singapore. But now I prefer working in the field. That's what I call doing music activism. Because Indonesia in need for that kind of stuff. There are many, as you all might realize, maybe Indonesia has such a diverse and very rich music culture, span from maybe 5,000 years ago, since the birth of gamelan music, but even way before that, they've been going on, one of the cave painting discovered is 45,000 years ago. And the music that relate to that kind of, the very ancient culture are still very much alive, but they are in a very remote area. So that's why I like doing work in that remote area. I stay a long time ago. I stayed for 1 year with the what it's known as a headhunter, the Dayak tribe, in the interior of the jungle in Borneo. I studied their music there, and then now I was just recently appointed as a they call senior culture fellow at the very new Indonesian Islamic International University, which is founded by the current president. And this is and I live in Bali, but I go back and forth, Bali, Jakarta, and some other places. So yeah, basically I have 3 platforms of working. One is what I call Indonesian National Orchestra, like an orchestra consisting of originally 35 pieces of indigenous musical instrument from across Indonesia. The minority of instrument, not gamelan. Got nothing to do with gamelan, but so I gather all the instrument that basically, fading away. And then my second platform is an institution. It's called Lokaswara. Lokaswara is this Sanskrit means center of the universal sound. and I run festivals through this institution. So like one of them is Mission Music Expo, but I have many others also festivals, world music festival in particular, in a remote area like in Sulawesi, I just mentioned, in Highland of Toraja, and also in Bandanera in Malukus, and also in other, of course, in other places also, like in the big city in Jakarta. So that's basically my activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Franki. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And moving on to our last panelist, Birgit.
Hello, and thank you for having me here. My name is Birgit Ellinghaus. I say hello to you all from the city of Cologne in Western Germany. And from my office, you see behind me with some books and CDs. Yes, I'm a music activist since the mid-1970s, which was a quite moving time here in Germany and in Europe. And since Germany is one of those territories who has a very special own history with the own music tradition due to the Nazi time and the Second World War. And being a country in the center of Europe with borders with 9 different countries, I started already in the mid-70s, and during all my years of activity to work not only with our own music, but especially with the music of migrants coming to our country or to Western Europe, and those who are traveling across Europe, because Germany is really on the crossroad. And through this work, I worked in more or less all imaginable fields of music, from producing albums on my own label, recordings with the radio stations, producing and curating festivals. And what I understood from all this work is that networking is a key. So to highlight specifically those music cultures who really need to be supported, of artists who need to get a voice in the Western world, I developed together a number of different networks. One we are running here in our region with about 25 organizations in the region, and we invite since 23 years every month one group from some place in the world for a residency to perform their concerts, to give teachings in the primary schools with the small kids of 6 to 7 years, to have collaborations with the radio, to get their music broadcasted, and to get meetings with other musicians in the region, and to exchange for future projects. And so I understood that networking is really key to make things possible. If you don't have big money, then you need to have fantasy, and you have to be together with a lot of people to make moving the things. And this is my heart as activist, and what I do on the formal level as appointed member by the German UNESCO in the advisory board for cultural diversity in Germany since 2009. So I can put my finger sometimes politically in the right wounds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Birgit, and to all of you for joining us once again. I think let's get the conversation started, because it has already started as you were introducing yourselves. The context is, for everyone who's tuning in, Folk Alliance International, as we all know, is the leading global organization for folk music and for the folk music community. over the last few years, the organization is realizing, that it has a huge focus on primarily North American and certain European forms of folk music. And there's more folk music beyond these regions that is not represented. So the idea of this panel sort of is connected to that mission of bringing in the rest of the world. So you will hear from the speakers here, their perspectives, and maybe their realities that are not true for us who live in, let's just say for the conversation today, the West, or people say the global North, we'll say the Western part, which primarily means North America, US, Canada, and Europe, essentially. So the description of the panel already sort of has this assumption that cultural ecosystems are endangered, or certain forms of music or folk music or traditions are endangered. So my first question, I guess, and we'll keep it as a conversation, but to all of you, is this a fair assumption? Are in your experience of the work you've been doing, is our traditional cultures, our folkloric traditions, our folk cultures endangered in the parts of the world you worked in or not? Let's start from there and then we can go forward. And Dr. Fouzia, I interrupted you in your introduction because you were already hinting on this. You were talking about the religious pressures, etc. So maybe you can kick us off. Is this a fair assumption to say that there is the diversity of the cultural ecosystem is endangered? And I'll remind you to unmute yourself. Sorry, you're mute again.
Yeah, so I would say yes, absolutely yes. We see that in front of our eyes over the years, as it has become more and more difficult to propagate these artists, to propagate their music, and to just sustain and transfer it into the next generation. It has been very difficult, and the resistance has been growing. So in our part of the world, I would say my being a woman adds more unique resistance and challenges into it. And then especially with music, I mean, acting and serial plays and television is still different. Even films is different. But music is the most vulnerable, I would say, most vulnerable aspect of our folk heritage. And languages also, I would say, which is kind of, we do not know when something will die and when it will continue. But the propagation has been reduced gradually. So yes, the assumption is right.
Thank you.
And yes, I agree that linkages, I have a lot of hope in linkages. Yeah.
Thank you. I do want to come back to this, but let's hear from others as well from your experience.
Yes.
Anyone else? Qian, do you want to share your experiences?
Yeah.
And is this a fair assumption or statement?
Yeah, I think the decline of folk music traditions is happening, but the reasons are there are various reasons for this. For example, I think one reason is generally the whole world is entering a modern or postmodern era, and people's lifestyles are changing. That has always been happening in history, but at our time it is happening at a faster speed. For example, the folk musicians I have worked with, the Zhou family band, who traditionally made their livings by performing at weddings and funerals and other life cycles rituals. They're still doing that, but their performance has changed quite a lot in the past 2 or 3 decades, I would say. For example, they now, because traditionally they play only acoustic instruments like the shawm, the sona in Chinese, and drums and gongs, but now they mostly use electronic instruments like the electronic electric keyboard as a accompaniment. That is very common, something very common. And they would only do purely acoustic performance when they are invited to give a concert. But in their daily life, their music is very different. And also they would perform together with entertainers, even street dancers, in order to draw the audience, to draw the attention of the audience. So this is because that's what people like, especially in the countryside. They're bored with traditional music, and they want something new and something more exciting. And another reason I would suggest is political reasons. For example, in China, we have this system of intangible cultural heritage modeled after the UNESCO's program. But for me, this project sometimes it tries to preserve some music traditions, but at the same time, it often decontextualize music. For example, among the Uyghur people, there is a tradition called the mash rap. It is kind of social gathering with with religious background, and people would play music and dance and recite religious poetry, and also it involves hospitality. So it has been a part of China's intangible cultural heritage project, but this government system, the government's narrative sees the tradition as only some kind of folklore activity, without mentioning its religious background. And what the government encourages is stage performances by professional performers, but not the real folk practice of the mash rap, because it involves religious activities which the government is afraid of. So after years of this kind of practice, the mash rap has basically for the masses has basically become a kind of stage performance rather than a folk or religious event. I think these are the two reasons I can think of at the moment that endangers traditional music. I'm not sure how to solve these problems, and that is actually a question I want to discuss with all of you. So
thank you. I think we should bring that question as well, hey, and share it with the audience as well. I just want to move to Birgit and maybe then Franki, because you talked about political pressures, and that's something that, Birgit, I think you're very familiar with the work that you've done and when you started. So maybe two things here, hey, like, so it's pretty clear that, you know, from the two speakers, the cultures we're talking about are facing endangerment. Maybe that, like, do you agree with that? And then, you know, if you do, what you, in your opinion, are the reasons for it?
I think that indigenous cultures are under pressure, but the reasons are so various. I think we might discuss this for a weekend, and even this would not be enough. And if we go back to history, indigenous culture was always under pressure, so it's nothing new. I'm neither here to defend UNESCO, but we have to understand that UNESCO is always a program of the nations under the roof of United Nations. So the entries in the Intangible Cultural Heritage Program is done via the governments, and the governments have political reasons to introduce, and other nations have a reason to adopt these propositions. So it's definitely Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention is a kind of political program, although I think the interpretation and how to adapt the use of this convention is really different in the different countries, depending on their political system and their understanding of the need to strengthen the cultural identity of their people in their territories. I just would like to insert another aspect, which I feel that it's absolutely important in this debate. We have a changing world, so the circumstances for the communities have changed dramatically, especially in the last 100 years, and even more through the digitalization. Because this opens the opportunity for everybody, more or less, even in the most far out territories, to get access to the world. But what has not been done in that time to adapt new formats of knowledge transmission to the next generation, because we have the traditional forms which are rooted in the indigenous groups and in all the different local cultures, and what we have on the other and how they are transmitted to the next generation was related to traditional families or villages or oral traditions for the nearby communities. Nowadays, we do not see anymore these basic structures, but we have not developed new forms of music transmission to make sure that the next generation could practice and even keep it alive, not as a kind of museum's piece. And this is, and we have to say, partly the fault of the Western communities, because the Western communities have this colonized way of putting music education philosophy and forms on indigenous and local cultures without consulting the people themselves how to develop decolonized a music education system for the future, which might include even digital forms. But this gap had not been closed, and as long as this gap is not closed, we could not expect that there is a dynamic for the future generations to keep the music alive.
Thank you so much, Birgit. This is such a significant point.
I just want to add to the comment that was made that until and unless the local people or the local musicians would come up with a system, because it has been very oral in the past, unless they come up with their own indigenous system to transfer this knowledge to the next generation, just following the colonial or whatever the Western written music format is not going to capture the spirit. In Pakistan, there have been some tries by different Western countries to send their musicians here and teach people how to write music. Now that might be okay for long term, but people resist that a lot, because here most of the music is taught and learned orally by just following traditions, and then you can innovate and but it's not like compositions are passed on. So I just wanted to add that aspect. Yes, there has to be a local
Hello.
way of. Is that Frankie?
Yes, I'm sorry. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Frankie.
Okay,
We couldn't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. I'm terribly sorry for this. Now I think I'm good now. I can use my computer now. Okay. As the saying goes, I think we are in the situation of the survival of the fittest. Music, culture comes and go. We don't have to complain that much about that. But I'm really interested in the way you state this issue, the way you shape this issue, because Indonesia, of course, we have so many layers of cultures. We are also in the crossroads of civilization. For we come from everywhere, and the next layer is always, of course, if there's very powerful, especially the religion, when they come with the big bad religion, they definitely, suppress the layers before. The layers and the bottom of the layers that I mentioned, the tribal music. When the Hinduism came, of course, the tribal music become, disappearing, and then when Islam came, the Hinduism-based music disappearing. Now, but the crucial one, of course, when the Western, culture came to Indonesia, especially the music industry in the 60s. Before, I think it should everything just naturally comes and goes. But especially when the cassette industry came to Indonesia in the 60s, then began there's a really very serious what I call distortion in the indigenous musical life, because the industry right away dominated the whole scene, and they are also centralized in Jakarta, and they, of course, this cassette is so powerful at the time, they can spread the music across the countries, which is before basically indigenous music stay within their own region, because there is no way you can brought this music, in a massive form to other region, right? But since this discovery of cassette industry become dominant, and then the market become has huge control of the music. What you want to hear in music is daily life, even in the very remote area. Mushan, I think, already mentioned a very good issue. It happened also here, and when the new technology, what here we call it the solo organ. Basically, right now killing all the indigenous musical practice in a very remote idea. That's also happening here, Mushan. But as I mentioned to you, the music industry now basically has since 1960 ignore traditional music practice, and they don't even care that much to put indigenous music in a cassette form and distribute it in the market. But now that's the thing. I think the situation now is a bit worrying to me, especially in relation to the tribal music in particular. The Hinduism-based music, of course, is also decaying. Gamelan is also decaying. Maybe if you're outside that you think gamelan is still very much alive. No, gamelan is not alive very much. Now it's very difficult to find gamelan maker, especially in Java. It's decaying. There's only one or two places that you can make gamelan. And you can imagine gamelan is such a huge instrument, not telephone instrument. A lot. So if you don't have the gongsmith, what can you do? It's basically that because it's relying on very heavy, very expensive, and very high advanced technology. That's the thing. But luckily, we still have Bali. Hinduism has been preserved in Bali, so we can still gamelan very much in Bali, but not so much Javanese gamelan. Gamelan also, we used to be a variety of gamelan, but now it's become homogenized. The Japanese gamelan it's become a central Java gamelan. Used to be many other type of gamelan with different scale, different tuning, all kind of that. Now we are still lucky. We still have very much Balinese gamelan everywhere. Gamelan is still very much alive. Even the tourism industry is very strong in Bali. But because the gamelan related to their ritual, their Hinduism belief, so gamelan is part of their ritual. So we are not worried about that.
We do have another 15 minutes to go, so I'll throw some two questions at you together. You've shared the challenges and the context in the areas of work that you have, which is really appreciated. For people who are tuning in to this discussion, can you share maybe something practical? Muqian asked this question already. Given the challenges that have been shared, what can be done to support, to promote traditional folkloric music, indigenous music, etc.? And I know all of you have done your part, so maybe you can throw in an example of your work and maybe throw in, what you feel people on this part of the world can do to support these traditions. And I don't know, whoever feels they want to start first. Muqian, you're on mute, so go ahead. Yeah.
I'm wondering if there are like not-for-profit agencies, because when I go to music festivals, usually the booking is done with whatever is available in the market, and those artists in the market are mostly represented by some commercial agencies. So it's usually the commercial agencies who decide what we as audiences can see in the music festivals, while other traditional music that is not so commercial seldom makes it to international or even national festivals. So I'm wondering if there's such a possibility. And also, I want to ask Birgit a question. It's about your presentation of the Uyghur musicians. Can you tell us how you did it? Because I tried to bring some Uyghur Sufi musicians to tour internationally. I tried 3 times and I failed 3 times because of the political restrictions from inside China. So it's almost impossible to bring them to tour internationally. And I have written that experience into my dissertation as a chapter about the political plight of Uyghur musicians. So I'm wondering is there any solution to this problem? Maybe UNESCO can do something about that.
Birgit, I think it's naturally over to you.
Yeah, so may I, just a short word. I don't think that nowadays it's possible to tour any Uyghur musician from China to any other place in the world. This is a political fact. Unfortunately, we did these tourings just when it still was possible. So from a 5-piece group, there were 2 musicians already in Central Asia, based in another country, and the other 3 we got out of China, but it was not an easy thing. But this is not possible nowadays, and as I told you, over the years I'm working, and then I come back to your questions, Umair, we have to deal with the political realities. So on one hand, we have to see as the musicians we are talking about, do they want to tour internationally? Many of them, they don't want, because they want to practice their music in their territories, are very happy to welcome people from abroad in their territories to show what they are doing. And there are wonderful programs. For example, in India, I know about such a program with about 2,000 local initiative, and foreigners are coming and touring through these territories. And this has a absolutely value to make the musicians making their life on music, to keep the music traditions alive. So we have not always to think to bring the musicians to other part, but to bring people who are interested in the territories. This is one thing. To bring the people outside of the territories, I have to say you can do it if you train the audience, that they are not running behind the big names, that they get interested in the quality of music, in the knowledge about the culture, in open the ears to understand different kind of music styles. So you have to train long-term and sustainable the audience, and make the audience growing through careful experience. So don't plan the concerts too big, plan many small things, which gives direct connection of the audience to the artist. And then we have to train the stakeholders, those who are responsible for programming, those who are responsible to decide about money, that they have an understanding about the equal need of international exchange to that what is prioritized in the country. And this is a kind of, let's say, political activism to train the stakeholders. And this is some aspect. And I would like to add a third point, which we have not spoken about, but I feel that it's absolutely important. We have to face the fact that we have now a lot of territories in the world where music can't continue on the ground, because the people have to leave the countries and are in exile. So we have to think about new dimensions of maintaining musical tradition, documentation and knowledge in exile. And even if the exile is not only in one hub, but spread a little bit all around the world, this is our duty as human beings towards other cultures who are endangered and in exile, to support them on the same level as they would be our own.
Thank you so much, Birgit. Dr. Fouzia, you were on mute there, so I'll request you to unmute and jump in again to contribute. You'll have to unmute again, Dr. Fouzia, sorry.
Okay, I wanted to add one thing to this cycle of discussion, and that is we have already mentioned technological constraints, etc. But in South Asian cultures, or at least in Pakistani, I can say, a lot of our traditions, especially the musical and singing traditions, they are embedded in very informal rituals. So they do not have to be composed or choreographed or cut to the audience with a certain time limit. And so that used to come in the way quite a bit. Like even for weddings, you know, our dancing and singing is very extempore. And it is not like 3 songs from this side and 2 songs from that side. It's very extempore. And the dancing also, if the elders do not dance, that means they're not very happy with the occasion. So, you know, you would pull and drag the mother and the father and the brother of the father, etc. So those things, a lot of those rich traditions are not suited well for stage or for an international performance group. And initially, when we used to have that problem, gradually we found out that if you contextualize the performance, then the audience also understands and does not have the same expectations. So, for example, for wedding music, if you put a bride and a bridegroom and a lot of relatives, and then you have the music in that context, then the audience also understand, and they don't have to stick to a 3-minute or a 4-minute margin. So that aspect also we should include in how folk culture has to be projected, stagified, or marketed, because our storytellers, now this is not wedding, but our storytellers were so used to singing the whole night. So their story would not end till morning. And then when we started doing the records and we got to the 3-minute and 4-minute, and the long one was a little longer than that, they are still angry at us for saying, okay, you cut us into time breaks. And that ruined the tradition. So there are always these kinds of, which are not very political, but it's just that you present your musical tradition in a different context where people are not used to that. So then you have to keep the mindset of the audience also, and the mindset of the performer also, and keep finding these amalgamated, like, overlapping situations where you have to deal with both.
Thank you. Thank you. This is such a significant point, and I feel all of you have touched on it so far. From the Western perspective, this is a living tradition, and it's maybe not meant for this stage. And as Birgit said, exactly, like maybe they don't want to tour internationally. So this is a very interesting perspective you've all shared in your own ways, that for people which are based in the West, if we are to promote traditions, we have to be sensitive about notions of, the tradition, the setting, and also recognize that time is in some ways also a very colonial construct. So it doesn't apply in certain cases. We only have 5 minutes left. This can go for a whole day, I feel. Franki, the last word goes to you, actually. So very quickly, in your opinion, for audiences here, how can they play a role in supporting traditions that you're working with, or folkloric traditions from other parts of the world?
The international connection is very important, because with the international connection, we can convince our government. Now, government actually has all the necessary tools in order to support, to preserve, to empower, to develop the indigenous music. They have a big fund, especially Indonesian government right now. I run Indonesian Music Expo because I got funding from the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology. But we need to convince them that this is very important. And how can we convince them? There are 3 things. First is you need to have an authority to do that. So otherwise, they're not going to listen to you. And then the second one, the most important thing is the network. If you have international network like WOMAX, recently I performed with my indigenous ensemble in Alp Philharmonic, gave a real big impact to domestically, because it was covered by media, TVs, two important TV stations, and one the top magazines like Time magazine in Jakarta. So it's become a huge, issue. And then the industry also starting to recognize me. They just invited me to perform for the G20, presidential meeting, which is impossible before. So that's due to international connection that I got through Birgit. Thanks to you, thanks to Birgit, but of course to WOMAX also, to Seoul Music Weeks that I have been attending. So that's very important to. And then next year, we will be collaborating with WOMAX. This is even more. So the government now feel like they are on the right track, for supporting Indonesian Music Expo. That's the thing.
Thank you, Franki, and congratulations. I think this goes back to where Birgit, you started us off, where networking, connections is the way to go. I'm afraid the time is over here, but thank you for contributions. Thank you for Folk Alliance for allowing us to connect with each other and for all of us to connect with your people. And maybe we can have more conversations in the future around this topic because we're just getting started here.
Yes.
With that, I will pass it on to Tressa and thank all of you once again for sharing your perspectives.
Thank you so much to Dr. Saeed, to Mushan, to Birgit Ellinghaus, and Franki Raden. And a most especial thanks to Umair for bringing this conversation to our community, to all the folks watching today, and for bringing all of these people together. What a wonderful discussion this was, and what a call to us to remember that the mission, part of Folk Alliance's mission to preserve folk traditions, that is, as Birgit said, our duty as human beings to each other. And so I hope we are all leaving this conversation inspired. We would like to take this opportunity also to thank our partner Global Toronto for supporting this important conversation, fostering dialogue as you do there around social change in the music industry. It's such an inspiration to us all. And on a final note, should you be watching this as part of our virtual conference, Folk Plus, our online offerings are made affordable thanks to the generosity of donors like you. So if you would like to support our work, donations can be made at folk.org/donate. Please stay safe and connected, community, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Very much.